Hey guys, so today we'll be taking a look at the missed representation of Black art. These are our themes for today. As far as Black representation in art goes, we'll be looking at artwork from the 1800s and 1900s. We'll be taking a brief look at the Harlem Renaissance, looking at the sexualization of the Black body, as well as the criminalization of the Black body. We'll be looking at representation of Black art inside of museums, and also ending supremacy through Black art. First off, we'll take a brief look at the Harlem Renaissance. I think the Harlem Renaissance is one of the most active and major historical events as far as it goes as representation of Black artists. So it was around 1925 that Black people started moving to cities like New York and Chicago because of the greater opportunity of jobs. Now, also racism inside of the North was not as, I say intense, but like racism is racism, period. But I guess I could say it was a lot less intense than it was in the South. And for some reason, Black people found a lot of refuge and freedom inside of specifically Harlem. It became a hub where Black people started to be able to be humans, whereas before they were just slaves. They were fending for their lives in America. And Harlem brought new light to the experience of what it was to be Black. And inside of the Harlem Renaissance, we saw the rising of Black musicians. We all, I think, are very familiar as far as, the booming of jazz music during that time, Black visual artists, Black cinematographers and filmmakers, so on and so forth, Black writers, Black publishers, and this time reinstated or punctuated the importance of African Americans as part of American culture, and that I am an African American, that we were not just slaves, that we were not just nobodies inside of this world, that we had greater gifts. One person that was, I would say an influential figure during this time was Lois Mailou Jones. She, in my reading of her, I didn't see that she was an activist, but I definitely see her action as very activistic. To be a Black artist in the early 1900s was a very loud statement. So she was raised in Boston, and she graduated from the MFA. And when she graduated, she started working in the textile industry in New York. And I want to say that this was just about around 1925, so just about around the time of the rise of the Harlem Renaissance. In about, I want to say 1928, she left New York to teach at Palmer Memorial Institute as a teacher. Now there she founded the art department there. She coached basketball as well as tribal dance. So she was a really dynamic person that had really great influence inside of spreading the possibility of art to other people inside of America. This is some of her artwork, and you can see that both of these paintings are extremely different from each other. You can see a very similar brushstroke and technique within each one, but as far as content, very, very different. So we'll start with the painting on the right. So I may butcher the pronunciation of this, but Arohot Pyrenees. was from when after she had graduated, she was started to be seen as an influential painter, and she got invited to travel to Europe, and specifically to go to Paris, France. And this trip ended up being a very frequent trip for her to go, maybe every year, every couple years, to Paris. And this was one of the landscapes that she created during that time. Now, as she got older, her painting style changed, and that is because she had married he was an African, let me see. Yes, he was an African graphic designer, and he had a lot of family in Haiti as well. Now, you can see between the two of these, she loves color. Like, she plays with color so well inside of her artwork. And so, being introduced to the culture in Haiti, culture in Africa as well, she reestablished the more muted, more neutral tones of color that she uses here in Pyrenees, into these vibrant, beautiful colors that are reminiscent of popular colors in Haiti and here in Nigeria. Now we're going to move on to talking about the dehumanization of the Black body through art. Now, when we look at the dehumanization of the Black body through art, it was through the means of slavery. Through the means of slavery. This is Louis Agassiz, who was an American scientist and daguerreotypist who used photography to justify slavery against Black people. And he specifically studied eugenics. And eugenics is the study of reproduction, the physical attributes, size of head, size of bodies, torsos, shoulders, to sort of define and to give value or undervalue different races and people with different physical attributes, skin tones, so on and so forth. Now, eugenics is what also allowed the Nazis to justify their treatment of Jewish people, disabled people, and other minority groups. These are some of the photographs that Agassiz took, and you can see that one of the first things that I noticed at looking at this work in particular was that it was very reminiscent of the modern day my words. It's very reminiscent of the modern day mugshot. And you see here that these are very, they are not posing. They are just there to be seen as true subjects. And that's what Agassiz really, really did inside of his work is it was not to see these people as models, as beautiful people, as human beings. This was literally just to use these people as subjects to extract information from their bodies, and like I said, not to see them as human, but to see them as specimens. Many of these images were also taken with the side profile because it was said that to have these people with their faces shown, you see the man in the middle especially, my heart cracks open, I feel him, these images were considered to be too human. And so oftentimes these side profile views were used also for eugenics for scientific purposes, but also to dehumanize these people as well. Because it's like, if you can't see the eyes of this person, then there's no soul, then there's no human. And then when you take away the soul and you take away the human, it's easy to dehumanize, to undervalue, to mistreat, to kill these people. And like I had said, that those images were very reminiscent of today's mugshot. And of course, like the modern day mugshot is not used for eugenics, but it's very similar in the way that photographs are being taken to account for this human being being jailed. So we see their frontal view, we see their side view, we can have a very clear picture of what this person looks like. Now, with mugshots as well comes the manipulation of mugshots that comes with like the time of magazines and more pop culture. Now, this is the same mugshot of O.J. Simpson during his trial, and we see that the one for Time magazine is a lot darker than the one for Newsweek, and that was not done after the fact in Photoshop. That was intentionally done at the printing of this magazine. I think we are all familiar with the idea that the darker the skin, the more intimidating and criminalist a black person looks. And that was Time magazine's trying to criminalize and invoke more fear into the public sphere as far as O.J. Simpson. This image is a very hard image to look at, in all honesty, and it's a little bit disbelievable that a person could be this harmed. But images like this are extremely necessary. So this image was taken by McPherson and Oliver, and they were two American Civil War photographers. And this is one of their most iconic images that showed the extensive abuse that was taken during slavery, to the point that this person's back is keloided and permanently damaged. Like, just looking at this and imagining like how much pain and beatings and whippings this person must have experienced to have skin and flesh that ended up to be that warped. And photographs like this really change the narratives as far as the treatment of slaves, because here we go from images like this dehumanization. It's like if Peter was facing towards us, we would not see his back, to actually getting to see the scarring and the physical scarring, not the emotional scarring, the physical scarring brought by being a slave, being an enslaved human being. And an image like this really humanizes this person. And just like a little bit of analysis of this photo, like, I don't see this photo even as like a pity me either coming from this man Peter. I see it as like an acknowledgement of his experience, and that is what was needed to bring value back into the black body. Now we're going to move into the sexualization of the black body. Now, many of us know WAP by Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion. And these are animated images of them in their voluptuous bodies, I could say that. And if you are familiar with Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, you would know that both of these women choose to sexualize their body. They know who their audience is. They know what people expect of women that are Black and that have their body shape, their curves, their personalities, and they use it to their advantage. Now, it has taken a lot inside of history to come to this point where Black women have the power to choose to sexualize their own body, because sexualization has been imposed upon Black women consistently. Sarah Baartman was the first Black woman to be publicly fetishized because of her body, and this she was a very, very young woman. She died at the age of 35, so you can only imagine. I mean, 1780 to 1835, like, she was being fetishized at a very young age, because of the way that her body stored fat cells. It stored them in her butt, and that really caused sort of like this uproar and fetishization of her body. Now, during the time of her life, there was a huge amount of emphasis on people with either disabilities or physical attributes that were out of the norm, and these people were often put on public display at freak shows, and she was one of these people at freak shows, and oftentimes some of the people at the shows, they would like hire her to come and give them private shows where they could touch her and grope her and things of that sort, and it's only imaginable the things that she experienced, like inside of this time of being fetishized. This is like another just like drawing of her. She was known as the Black Venus, and what I think is the most ironic thing of this title of her being known as the Black Venus is that, well, when we think about the white Venus, we think about this goddess that is being protected and put on a pedestal and who walks with grace and poise, and it's like we would never see an image of white of like the white Venus being kind of like looked at and measured and prodded in this way. And on this it says sexualized savages, primal fears, and primitive narratives in French. Now, one of the other parts of the sexualization of the Black body is the sexualization of the male body. You know, you think about like Chris Brown, you think about Drake, and you see that these men are often surrounded by beautiful, bodacious women, and I think about like Black models and Black men being shown inside of music videos, very hypersexualized, like grinding on women, like shirt off, tattoos, ripped abs, very provocative, and generally being shown in either a criminalized or sexualized way. Now, Jordan Castile is a modern artist. She still makes art today, who embraces the community in a natural environment. And within this scope of community in a natural environment, she chooses to push the edge of what it means to be a Black male. And with that, she strips away the sexualization of the Black male body. So you see here these men in innocence, like this man on the left here, so very innocent. And that is also something that we don't often see inside of art of Black men, is innocence, because we are always like given this like toughness, this macho-ness, this get shit doneness, this I'm not weak, like energy from male figures that we are either seeing in artwork and paintings, or inside of photography. And here we get these very soft images. Like, yes, we still get his abs, we still get his bicep, like, yes, he is still shirtless, and he's in this, like, he looks so little, like, he just looks like a little man, especially with the perspective that she uses to look down on him as if he is a child. I have a partner, and he is a Black man, and he is a large Black man. He's like 6 foot, and he's like a bulky guy. He's got really big biceps and stuff. And, you know, I think about like perception of how people might think of him by first look. And then it's like he opens his mouth. Like, I remember I was talking with one of my friends, and they had said that, like, after they had met him, it's like he was like a nerd and a teddy bear. And it's like, when you give a human being a chance to be human, they are not all hard bones. And I think that Jordan Castile does a really beautiful job at rehumanizing and adding like inner child back into what it means to be a Black male. Similar to this man on the right hand side, it's definitely less childlike. It's more just relaxing in the nude. But once again, like, there's this idea that to be naked is to be sexual, and the fact that maybe he's sitting there watching TV, whatever, just like in his home, chilling, watching TV naked, no hard on, no anything, we don't see his genitalia, reinstates that we as Black people are human, are primal beings, can be naked without being sexualized, without sexualizing ourselves. And I also want to emphasize how much trust she had to gain with her models to have them be this vulnerable, to have this connection with Black men as a woman, to be able to have them be nude, for her to feel safe, for them to feel safe. That must have been a really beautiful and pure relationship. Now we're going to move to the representation of Black art inside of museums, and how it has the potential to end supremacy. So this is Mona Chalabi, and she is a data journalist, really, really incredible human being. She does data on a whole wide variety of things, on climate change. Like, she's done a lot of analysis on change of jobs and work now in the era of COVID, loss of employment, things of that sort. One of the analysis that she did was on the representation of people inside of museums. This is what her study came out to be. She also created these images, and her study came to find that the top 18 major U.S. museums are 85% white and 87% male, which is definitely not surprising. And it's really nice to have the numbers to back the experience when black and brown people are feeling underrepresented inside of American museums. It's nice to be able to say in the face of people who are like, oh, well, we have this one artist here, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, we can turn around and say, actually, no, 85%, on average, 86% are white and are male. And we need more representation. And so she broke it down in this really nice visual of if there were 100 people and just if all the artists in major art museums were represented by 100 people, only 12 of them would be women. 1 white and 1 Asian, or 11 white and 1 Asian. Pardon me. And 88 of them would be men. 75 white, 8 Asian, 3 Latinx, and 1 black, and 1 of another race or ethnicity. And then she carries on to show us what representation in museum should look like if it actually represented the U.S. population, which still there's so many more white people represented there, but much more black, brown, indigenous people represented. And we only have this disparity because of colonization of the Americas. This is the work of William Edmondson. He is the first African American sculptor who was given a solo exhibition in MoMA, which was in 1937. So this was even after the Harlem Renaissance. His work makes me so curious because it's so very primitive. It reminded me of the votive figures, actually. Really, really interesting. I'd love to talk about a recent exhibition in Northampton, actually, co-organized by Marjorie Morgan. The exhibition is called Nothing Stable Under Heaven, and that is a James Baldwin quote. And in an interview with her, I had asked her about the experience of co-curating, co-organizing an exhibition of Black artists inside of a gallery in a place like Northampton. Now, this a little bit surprising, a little bit not surprising. It had a little bit of controversy to it. My first thought of, Black exhibition in Northampton, cool, let's go. Like, I feel like a lot of places would be on board, but that wasn't necessarily the place. And this is where supremacy shows up inside of the art world. Now, Marjorie was first very inspired to kind of show up for Black people and Black artists after the murder of George Floyd. And this first was fostered by wanting to put up a Black Lives Matter sign. And now this gallery has a board. And when she went to this board, there were some people that had adamant opposition, some people who were non-responsive, and the sort of culmination of like that debriefing was that they were not going to put up a Black Lives Matter sign in the window. And through like exploration, through looking at the curation of other galleries, Marjorie still really wanted to emphasize the voices of Black people, of whiteness, of supremacy. And one of the ideas that she had gotten was to do a showing of the experience of whiteness inside of museums against Blackness. Not like against an opposition, but like the polarity of whiteness and Blackness being represented in galleries and in this world. And that got more support from her colleagues. And then she said, well, like, fuck talking about whiteness. Like, let's be real. Like, we don't need more white people talking about white experiences, because that is what has filled so much of our world and so much of specifically the Black experience. And she had proposed, okay, like, let's do a show of local Black artists. And that was also, okay, like, people on the board could get down with that. And so Marjorie used her connections around the community to bring together a group of Black artists to show here. Now, one of the, I don't want to call it ironic, but one of the interesting features of the finding Black artists to show here was that none of the people on the board of the gallery knew Black artists. And so it took a little bit of, like, I would not say not a ton of effort, but it took, you know, a little, like, pulling from different strings to bring together these artists, myself included, to show at this show. And this is what it came out to be. Now, one of the things that comes up with showing Black art is that Black art is, quote unquote, always political. And I think, in my personal opinion, that is what prevents a lot of galleries and museums from showing Black art, in all honesty. And I think that comes from a place of fear, that comes from a place of, like, a blockage of between, like, Black and white people being afraid to be called racist and supremacist and so on and so forth. And really needing to break away. And that's what this museum, that's what this gallery showing did, is, like, it helped, I think, the community break away from the idea that all Black art is political. Political in terms of, like, you are Black, I'm white people did this to me, white people are colonizers, so on and so forth. One of the artists is Simone Johnson, really, really incredibly beautiful artist. And she is a performance artist. And a lot of her work is centered around water and water being a human right. And also looking at the ripples of climate change and how it is literally washing over our future, and how we need to act and value our water source now. And yes, this is political because it's talking about climate change, but it is not political in terms of Black and white. Like, this is such an important narrative to have brought to the forefront, especially as a performance artist. These are some stills from her performance at the Ocean. Moving on to the colonization of art, we have this painting by Turner called The Banjo Lesson. And in this, we see a number of political points. We see a probably grandfather teaching his grandson how to play the banjo. Now, the banjo was an instrument that came from Africa on slave ships to America. Now, when it came to America, the banjo, colonizers took this instrument and started to repopularize it in their own terms, which is what we also know as appropriation. They appropriated this instrument. Now, this image is showing the grandfather showing his grandson how to play this instrument in the new way of the colonizers. The banjo was played in a very particular way by the people of its origins. And this is a statement of colonization, yes. And it also shows the ability of Black, brown, indigenous people to adapt to environments as slaves, to adapt their environment as instrumentalists. One artist that was shut down by the American system was Billie Holiday. Now, one of her most famous songs was Strange Fruit. And I'm going to play just a little bit of this song. Here we go. Oh, we get a commercial here.
Black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
Now, this song was about lynching and the burning of Black people in America. And Billie Holiday was chased and tried to be manipulated and set up by the U.S. government to prevent her from singing this song, because it showed the raw truth of American society, of American culture, of colonization, of supremacy. And the government did not want her words of truth to warp the perception of the great America and to warp the perception of the right to kill Black people. If you are into pop culture, or if you have a very awesome art history professor, you have seen this video Ape Shit by Beyonce and Jay-Z, but I definitely give more credit to Beyonce. Sorry, Jay-Z, love you, but like Beyonce. And this shows Beyonce and Jay-Z in the Louvre. This is a deep revolutionary statement on Black culture, on Black people, and Black representation of art, in art. Now we know that the Louvre is an incredibly prestigious museum in France, and that inside of it, and inside of many museums, there is very little representation of Black people and Black artists. Now, given the status of the artwork inside of this museum, given the status of Beyonce and Jay-Z, like, the artwork in the Louvre is the best of the best. Beyonce and Jay-Z are the best of the best, the most refined people inside of the world of like history of art making, as creatives, as artists, as dancers, as singers, as rappers. Now, inside of this, we have a shift of the Black body. I think that one of the only artworks of black person inside of the Louvre is that of a slave. And now we have the shift of the black body in immobility, in slavery, as a painting inside of the Louvre, to the black body being in motion inside of the Louvre, being and taking up true space inside of the Louvre, like literal space. We have these beautiful women, all shades, dancers, taking up space on these steps, taking up space in front of incredibly large paintings made by white artists, and making, I would even say, a larger statement than the artwork themselves. In all honesty, it's like, we have seen, like this painting in particular, the Mona Lisa, time and time again, and we've seen Jay-Z and Beyonce time and time again, but it's like this representation, like, yes, the Mona Lisa is incredible, like an incredible piece of artwork, but the fact that Beyonce and Jay-Z are taking up this space, are not just taking up this space, are owning this space as black people inside of the Louvre, that is a very loud political statement, and I would say reduces the stagnancy brought by colonization, brought by Western white representation inside of art museums. I think about how many people, even white people, would be allowed to like host, direct, dance in, and like pose in and rent out the Louvre. Not a lot of fucking people would be able to do that, but you better bet that Beyonce and Jay-Z could do that, because of how they hold themselves, in regard to them, their morals, their artistic value, and their valuing and statement of who they are as beings. Now, the final things that I'm going to talk about is the value of archiving Black visual art, and I'll start with that. Now, being able to keep documentation of Black art is important, because when we have the representation of multiple voices, of multiple ethnicities, of Black people who have been underrepresented inside of America, we then are able to dismantle supremacy. So through representation, through increasing representation, we are decreasing like the monopoly that it is to be an artist, in fact a human being inside of this world. And that's really what this comes down to, is being able to be shown as a human being, to be shown as an intellectual as well. As I think that's another big part of the representation of Beyonce and Jay-Z inside of the Louvre as artists, is they are also both very affluent intellectual individuals. And I think also by holding on to Black art, we are able to increase voices, increase hope. It's like, how much hope did that give Black people, Black and brown people, to see Beyonce and Jay-Z inside of the world of the Louvre? And now we have that video archived. Like, no, it's not archiving in the traditional, like, okay, we're putting this painting in a file in a safe and we're gonna keep it and whatnot, we're gonna have this collection here. But we do have this video of Beyonce and Jay-Z in the YouTube archive. So in 50, 60 years, when I have kids, well, I won't be having kids in 50, 60 years, but in 50, 60 years, my children, I can say, look what people of my time did. Look what you can do. Look what exists in this world of possibility. And I think that is also what also dismantles supremacy, is looking at the world of possibility. So as long as we have Black people thinking that they are not worthy of being artists, like think about in general of the perception of the starving artist syndrome. So we already have white people as well feeling like, oh, like I have to be a starving artist inside of this world in order to be an artist. We, by representing Black people, we are able to give Black people the hope that they can be artists too. Now, one of the projects that I was a part of last year, I'm a part of this space called the Youth Empowerment Arts. And what we did was we gathered a group of local artists, Black artists and white allies, and we supported a group of youth from the Invincible Project to create a mural of visionary unity and futuristic brilliance together. And that was a statement of harmony, of unity, of love, not of shackles, not of white people did this, like we deserve that, like of just universal unity. And when we allow Black voices to step up in a way that is no longer fighting for their right to live, that they can say, okay, now that we are done fighting for our right to live, we can live in a place of unity and harmony. Now, I'm not saying by far that Black people don't have to fight for their right to live, because we are very much so in that methodology right now, in that mode right now. But like slowly we are moving away from Black people having to fight for their lives. And once again, like talking about the Nothing Stable Under Heaven exhibit, of the idea that Black artists only make political art. Like with this piece that I'm talking about, along the Northampton bike path with these youths, like then we get to have Black people believing in a dream that is bigger than just getting to voice themselves beyond the wrongs that were done to them, done to us. Yes, I think that is all that I have for today. I hope that you learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot through this process, and I'm really grateful to have been able to create this honors project. Thank you so much. Bye.